Welcome to another episode of the CPG Guys podcast. Our co-hosts, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond, explore how brands and retailers engage with consumers online, in-store, and everywhere in between. And now, here are Sri and Peter. And now the conclusion of the CPG Guys conversation with Bryan Gildenberg from Omnicom Group. We just talked about 2020. Let's look forward to 2021.
Right.
Brands like Monster, Coke, Pepsi, Bimbo Bakeries, Hershey, Conagra, they, according to IRI, all saw e-commerce sales grow triple digits.
Sure.
Over 100%.
Because they weren't selling anything in e-commerce before COVID yet.
Fair enough.
So yeah, that's,
but,
I mean,
but
not
if you,
nothing. But yeah,
if you
yes.
add to that the incredible increase in sales they had in physical stores,
yeah,
because of the shift from food service to home cooking, what advice do you have for brands in building plans for the coming year? Because I think, as we've discussed in a previous episode, no good deed goes unpunished.
Right.
And they're all probably celebrating the great numbers they have and getting, hopefully, deservedly so, some great bonuses and people selling into grocery and e-com.
Yeah.
But what do they do for 2021?
The one word is humility. Just approach the plan as though it is something that was designed by people that have no idea what's going to happen. So, because that's what it is. No one has any idea how anything in 2021 in any meaningful way is going to unfold. So, in real life, we don't know. We don't know how quickly especially looking at the U.S. Right? We don't know how quickly people are going to get vaccinated. We don't know how many people are going to want to get vaccinated. We don't know how that's going to influence the mechanics of things like schools opening, which is probably the single biggest time budget shift that's going to happen in 2021. So we don't know if schools are going to reopen before the 2021-2022 school year for most people. So we don't know how much homeschooling we're going to be. We don't know whether we're going to be able to leave the office to go to work or leave home to go to work. There's just so much uncertainty out here that I think what you've got to do is be prepared for the same degree of nimbleness and adaptation that you used in 2020. Just be prepared for that in 2021. It's not going to be the world is on fire, it's a crisis, we have no idea, but you're going to have that same level of business uncertainty. And anybody that thinks they don't is delusional. So,
do you think there's going to be some risk of talent flight, particularly in the organization where they were highly incentivized based upon their volume, that they're worried about next year and their comps are not going to be even remarkably what?
I mean, unless the problem is that where are you going to go? I mean, somebody from Hershey's is going to go to Coke, they're going to have exactly the same problem. I mean, they could go sell cruises, I mean, if they want, but that's like the things that went down during the pandemic are a completely different ecosystem. So probably sure, but I don't know that that's, as I said, I just don't know that there's a natural landing place for people who are trying to do that. The other thing is I just think there's going to be replanning is going to be way more important in 2021 than it was in any other year, with the possible exception of 2020. Because in 2020, you weren't really replanning, you were just adapting. So I think the ability to replan, the ability to look at your forecast on a regular basis, the ability to communicate to your supply chain teams that you are in an uncertain world and that they should prepare for that, not yell at you because uncertainty has happened as a result of fairly obvious things. To your I would say that the more flexible capacity a company has in 2021, the better they're going to be. Because I just think volume-based planning this year is just going to be a bell curve distribution. Some companies are going to get it right. Some companies are going to be way under. Some companies are going to be way over. It's just I don't think there's anything in the data in 2020 and anything I've seen from anybody's model that leads me to believe that anybody's going to be any better at predicting this than anyone else. So I would say that for the companies that got shortchanged in 2020 by supply chain issues, be incredibly nimble and aggressive. One, make sure your supply chain works in 2021, and then be really super nimble and aggressive about where you see the people that kicked your butt in 2020 faltering, and get on that immediately as a way to recapture share that you may have lost. For companies that did well in 2020 because they were competing with people that had supply chain outages, exactly the opposite is true. Be hyper vigilant around share loss and really really work to protect the share gains that you've gotten and understand that, particularly in the back half of 2021, for categories that saw a market increase in consumption pre-COVID, your share gain may be accompanied by a volume decline. So the category may shrink by 10. If you only shrink by 5, you gain share. So, and the ability to dynamically go back and forth between those metrics and not correlate volume and share, and not correlate the tactics you would use to gain volume and share, I think is really important. So very few companies are really good at fighting that, what I would call a rearguard action, which is gaining share in a slow growth or negative growth environment. That I think will be a pretty useful skill in the back half of 2021.
Amazon, the 100-pound, 5,500-pound gorilla in the room in 2020.
Yes.
I mean, no matter what subcategory or category you do business in, what's changed for sure this year is your Amazon sales have gone from also looking at it every now and then, once a quarter, to having an Amazon team to being one of your top customers.
Yeah.
Purely given what the pandemic drove now. Is it going to last that way forever? Probably not, or probably yes. Thoughts, Bryan? Is Amazon one of the most important retailers for CPG go forward? Almost Walmart-like?
Yeah, I would. Well, I mean, Walmart-like, but for different reasons. They're going to get big enough where the demands they put on your system, which are different than Walmart's, probably mean that in terms of net resource consumption, they're going to get close to Walmart, because for most CPG companies, their business is built for Walmart. So, and Sri, you've heard me say this any number of times over the years. The easiest way to think about Amazon in some ways is just like a bigger, crazier version of Costco. So just imagine if Costco sold everything. That's Amazon. So the resource requests that Amazon puts on your business in some ways are quite similar to Costco's. Obviously, from a digital media point of view, they're completely different. But in terms of a supply chain, the unique packs, the supply chain rigor, the exactitude, the implications for not having it right, the deleterious effects of out of stocks on your business. I mean, this is all, to anybody who's run a Costco business, this all looks really familiar. It's just that this is now, Costco sells every SKU you have, not just the ones that are built for Costco. And they have a third-party network of just like, if you thought about Costco and the third-party sellers that they sell to as part of the same retailer, and the third parties that they sell to were as price disruptive, like if a inner city bodega was as price disruptive as a 3P seller, that's kind of where you would be. So yes, I think there's a decent chance that in the early 2020s, Amazon becomes the most resource intensive customer you sell to, because Walmart's bigger, but at some basic level, it's easier because your business was built to deal with it. So yes, I think that you're going to find that the Amazon team is going to be the thing that's probably talked about first in most weekly sales meetings and most monthly top-to-top updates. I think Amazon's going to be the thing, because you're going to get to the Walmart business and it's like, yeah, we'll give it, compared to that, this is kind of, we know how to do this. So yes, I think that's very true. So, and as we talked about before, I think the evolution of Amazon as a media platform, where not just as a media platform itself, but where you can do, in many ways, more interesting demand creation activity in the media side of the business. And then the other core metric, of course, with Amazon, which they'll happily tell you, and which other people are starting to prove, is that your Amazon media spend is having a knock-on effect into channels that aren't Amazon. So now you've got it as a legit media platform, as well as a platform where you're doing it as part of a JBP to connect to your merchandising efforts and everything else that Amazon's involved with. I mean, Twitch, if it were on its own, would probably be one of the 10 most interesting emerging media platforms in the world. So and it's just part of Amazon. So there's a lot to this, but yes, I think Amazon will be your most resource intensive customer.
E-commerce people, you waited for this moment for a decade. It's here.
Yeah.
Ride it like a jockey at the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah. So or the classic old phrase, when God is seeking amusement, He answers your prayers. The level of rigor the Amazon team is going to need from a supply chain point of view, and from I think a couple of things Amazon teams are going to need to get really good at. Number one is knowing that they live in a small sample size world sometimes, being able to talk to their company about what Amazon data is telling you is an incredibly helpful skill. So because people overreact to data points, and in Amazon, because the data points are often quite small, you can get really weirded out really quickly by doing that. So, time trending, the ability to frame Amazon performance in a way that executives don't over respond to, I think is going to be really important. The second one is really understanding the cost to serve of Amazon versus other retailers, because so much of the cost to serve for Walmart is built into the system of how your company functions that Amazon's going to look way more expensive than Walmart to any CPG company. So you've got to be able to say, hey, look, there's a bunch of stuff we do for Walmart that's just part of how we do business. That's different. So, and whether that's your manufacturing runs or your logistics network, or there's just a bunch of stuff that's been, and I'm harping on Walmart, but the same is true for Kroger if you're a food company, or Target to some degree. But it's just you are trying to solve a very different problem. And it's, again, the parallel is, for food companies especially, Walmart for years looked unprofitable compared to grocers. That's insane. Like that's clearly demented when we look at it now. Walmart's a much more profitable distribution channel than grocers ever were. But it's just that your business was wired for that, so it looked profitable, because all of the assumptions you had about how business should work were baked into grocery. So that's going to be hard work for the Amazon team. And with more scrutiny, most Amazon teams I know, sweeping generalization, don't know anywhere near enough about how their company actually works. So, and that would be my tip for 2021 and 2022. Go learn how your company works. Go learn how it makes decisions. Go learn the analog planning processes. So, and this is out of an old framework, Sri, that I've presented years ago called Digital Adolescence. As you become an 18 or 19-year-old in your household, you kind of got to learn how your parents tick as adults, right? You can't just be a kid and, trash the house all the time and just expect it to all be fine. You gotta get to know your parents as people. And I think that to some degree is what Amazon teams are going to be tasked with. You've got to get to know, the adults in your company, the people that run the place, as not just people that are denying you stuff to do your job, but you've really got to understand why they were denying it, what their decision criteria were like, and how they think. So,
and I think what you're highlighting very clearly that I really want to make a point here is, I think those same last 10 years where we said, hey, e-commerce folks, you've been waiting for your moment, it's here, et cetera, et cetera. E-commerce folks have also not had the level of scrutiny brick and mortar or Walmart team gets on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. That moment has actually arrived, if I heard you correctly. One of the talent gaps we have on the digital side is we are largely led in this journey by digital natives. And as you pointed out, the best way they can bridge the gap is understand the algorithm of the company and actually show empathy and embrace it, as opposed to I'm not getting what I want.
Yeah, that's it. The algorithm's a really good word. You've got to understand the slow burn, human-driven algorithms that power decision making within your company. So that's
fair to say, Brian, those that actually have brick and mortar experience and digital experience, you may know two people in that journey.
Yes, it seems like it's almost a shameless plug for what you two guys do, but it's really true, Sri. And I think it's one of the, I know you better than Peter, but that was one of the reasons why you were so effective, especially in a company like Pepsi that wasn't really thinking about e-commerce at all. You knew the brick and mortar business. You'd ridden the trucks. You knew how the people you were trying to get to change their minds thought. And I do think that digital teams don't spend enough time doing that. They spend a lot of time complaining about how people don't get it, and they don't spend enough time thinking about why they don't get it and what they specifically don't get. So,
Brian, one way to overcome that is, digital folks step up and ask for a rotation in Minneapolis, or perhaps in Chicago, or Woonsocket, or in Bentonville.
Yeah, or in your headquarters, but not in the e-commerce part of the foosball table. So go back to the old part. See the crappy coffee the rest of the company drinks, and then you'll have a deeper understanding for how it works.
My first week in the CPG industry, I delivered livestock to Woolworth stores in Spanish Harlem. That's how I got my boots wet on the ground in the business.
Livestock?
Hart's Pet Care.
Okay.
They needed to sell livestock in order to fuel the need for all of their seeds and edible
Nice.
products.
Nice.
I thought running a route for Frito in Dallas was a big deal. Nah.
Yeah, I think it's the sequel to the great book of Tree Grows in Brooklyn. A cow eats in Harlem. So
hard to believe that was their largest account in 1992 when I joined the company. Oh,
yeah,
that's changed. So let's shift to social media, particularly as it pertains to lower funnel conversion. We're talking, for the people in the audience, the likes of Twitter and Facebook and Snapchat and Instagram and TikTok. I would also remark that 2020 was a remarkable year in that Snapchat faced some debilitating challenges from shifts in what Instagram did by adding stories to their platform, the emergence of TikTok. But in any event, I'm a Canadian, so we always refer to the great God of Canada, Wayne Gretzky.
Yep.
Where's the puck going in 2021 with respect to social media and lower funnel conversion, Brian?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. Look, TikTok's interesting, and Walmart's, I guess, involved in it, though the whole future of that is very contingent upon things I don't understand. But sure, if Walmart's involved in TikTok and they're already starting to pilot that, I think Walmart's looking for a social media platform it can disproportionately own, no pun intended, not necessarily by taking an ownership position in it, but trying to find a platform that's sort of more uniquely there. So, TikTok's the next one up. So why not? That one, there are smart people at TikTok that will figure out how to monetize it. That every social media platform that comes along seems like it's progressively harder to monetize with an old school media approach. And maybe that's just because I'm old and I don't get stuff anymore. But so that's fine. I do think that, to me, from a social media point of view, I think the thing you want to watch from a retail point of view is Instagram, and probably less for CPG maybe, but the degree to which Instagram can and should disrupt horizontal commerce, to go back to the model we were talking about earlier, is enormous. So it would not surprise me at all if Instagram was the largest fashion retailer in the world in 2025.
Should the CPG guys be adding a flash sale site on Instagram for all of our blingy merchandise? Is that what you're telling us?
Well, yes, absolutely. Because, as paragons of fashion, I don't know. I like keeping up with the CPG. First, now that the Kardashians are off, I think keeping up with the CPG guys would be the next great reality hit. So yes. But yeah, I think in general, I think Instagram's
Peter may be the paragon of fashion, but I'm just trying to keep my nails in shape.
Oh, that unnecessary zoom, Shri.
Yeah, that's really gonna drive viewership. So let's look at Shri's creepy extremities. Yes, I think Instagram's going to be a huge part of this. I think Facebook will. Twitter's role in commerce, to me, seems really unclear. I also think Twitter's prospects post-Trump are just interesting in general. Like, I just don't. I think Twitter's basically going to turn into a news site for the most part. And I think there are subcultures within Twitter that are really important. So if you're trying to sell to the African American community, Twitter's incredibly important because Black Twitter is a real thing, and there's a real vocabulary to it and a social understanding part. So that, I think, is important, but it's more as a media play. I think that from a straight up commerce point of view, Instagram to me is a giant. I think Snap could also start to get really interesting just because they have really smart people and they'll figure stuff out. But yeah, I think the ways in which you can turn Instagram stories, the Instagram feed, and Snap into commerce platforms, I think that'll be pretty significant.
Okay. Speaking of which, Brian, we actually talked about D2C a while ago as a 2020 trend. And you clearly discussed how first-party data and obtaining first-party data shouldn't be the first approach to why D2C needs to exist. And there are many other reasons why, such as user experience being primary. But I'd love to go back to first-party data.
Okay.
It seems more and more that companies are now almost close to the obsession of, I need first-party data because I want to build my one-on-one relationship with the consumer.
Yeah.
And actually, for the first time, discussing lifetime value and repeat purchases, etc. Is this a legit 2021 trend that keeps growing and brands acquire more first-party data? Is it par for the course these days?
I think it's not I think it's par for a very difficult course. Yes. So yes, I think it's not easy, but yeah, I think this is the language of CRM and the mechanics of it, the customer lifetime value, relationship management, drop rates, all the stuff, all that language is going to become most marketing is going to turn into CRM. I mean, this has been the observation that I kind of got firsthand years ago, which is if you look at my old employer, WPP, the core of their commerce architecture is the old Wunderman business. And for those of you that remember Lester Wunderman and what he built at Wunderman was a CRM company. I mean, that's really what it was. It was a magazine subscription business. And there's huge parts of that are incredibly relevant to marketing in the 2020s. I mean, as much as misguided as a lot of brands' D2C efforts are, the notion that your consumer is in a relationship with you that should be thought about more like a subscription, even if they're not buying it that way, I think is incredibly important. And those metrics for success, that way of thinking about how you communicate, how you reinforce, I said this the last time we talked, but there's a reason Walmart didn't hire Janie Whiteside from Target or from P&G. They hired her from American Express. So American Express is the best CRM company in the world by a mile. And I think that's part of this, that I think all of marketing is morphing into this CRM style rhythm where a database understanding of your ongoing relationship with the consumer is going to be unbelievably important. Yes. So, and D2C is a way to do that. But I think the more important transition isn't we do D2C and therefore CRM becomes more important. I think it's CRM becomes more important, customer lifetime value. Those calculations become more important, and D2C is one of a variety of platforms we can use to leverage that.
All right, last question for you as we are looking forward to 2021, Bryan. And this really has to do with the demand chain
Yes.
on driving customer acquisition, from engaging them to actually converting them, and thereby developing sustainable customer relationships. There are a whole lot of new ways and means going on. What are your thoughts on that, and where should brands be focused for 2021?
I think it's interesting. The easiest way to explain this is for the way that you manage supply chain in 2020 is the way you're going to want to manage the demand chain in 2021. Mm-hmm. You're going to have that level of volatility, that level of transition, that level of change. So do you need to have a daily call about your demand chain in terms of how the consumer's journey is changing as parts of the country reactivate and come back to life post-COVID? Is that changing habits and media inputs and touch points and shopping? Yeah, you may. You may literally be having daily demand chain updates that are looking at the world so that you can flexibly adapt as easily as possible to how that demand chain shifts as we renormalize. And look, I think the last thing I'll leave everybody with here is that I fundamentally believe that 2021 and 2022 this is the show. This is the one time you're ever going to have as a marketer or salesperson to reestablish consumer preference. Consumers tried a bunch of new stuff in 2020, but they didn't form any habits because nobody's lives are consistent. The renormalizing of the world in 21 and 2022 is the single greatest marketing opportunity that will ever exist. And that's why putting as much energy into demand chain management as it changes and transforms in 21 and 22 is so critical. Knowing the journey, knowing how it's changing, knowing where and how to reach people most effectively in that journey, and being fanatical about how you manage those transitions as we move out of pandemic life into post-pandemic life, you will be able to change your business for a generation based on the work you do over the next 18 months. So that's my final parting prediction for the world to come.
You heard it from the Oracle of New Jersey. Words to live by for 2021.
And with that profound statement from the boss of retail and CPG himself, Bryan Gildenberg, a reminder to all our audience that you can find all our content on cpgguys.com this past week. You can also find our picks for elite retailers, brands, and marketplaces who stood out in 2020. You can find the full videos on IGTV, Instagram TV, on our Instagram handle, CPG Guys, or you can listen to the podcast, as always, by going to tinyurl.com/CPG Guys. And Bryan, I want to profusely thank you for being our first guest.
Oh, no, thanks. Yeah.
And to help us close 2020 and open up 2021 as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for the opportunity, guys. I got to run. So take care.
Thank you for doing this week over week with me.
Shri, it's an absolute pleasure. And I think we have some big news around social media for our audience in 2021. What is that?
Have you ever heard of the word? Yeah. Have you ever heard how the clock chimes? It goes tick and tock. CPG Guys having a TikTok channel in 2021.
Oh yeah, we've dropped our first video.
Thank you, folks, and catch us back next week as we bring Che Huang, the CEO of Box.com, to talk to us about everything what a club online retailer looks like.